So, good evening, Tibetan friends, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the Václav Havel Library, to our event that is going to focus on the role of Tibetan culture as a way of resistance. We are going today to listen music, watch a dance performance, and discuss and read poetry and literature. Important part of today's evening is the launch of the Czech edition of Tenzin Tsundueho's collection of poems and essays entitled Kora. Let me now welcome and thank our partners, without whom we wouldn't be able to be here and have our guests. Czech NGO, Czech Supports Tibet, and I would like also thank the State Department of the United States and U.S. Embassy, especially Mr. Aiden, please. Aiden, thank you very much for being with us. And now let me welcome Martin Bursík, Chairman of the Czech Support Tibet, for the opening speech. Martin, please, floor is yours.
Dobrý večer, good evening. So I see we run it in English, so welcome here. On behalf of Czech Support Tibet, it's our great pleasure to welcome Tibetan artists. We came to the idea some years ago together with my wife because we realized that it is not just about saving Tibetan culture, Tibetan religion, Tibetan traditions, Tibetan language, all that what the Chinese brutal communist regime is trying to diminish and to sweep out of this world, but that there are young artists who are continuing the tradition, which is further developing. So we invited these three artists, which we know for a while, to be here. We connected with the celebration of freedom of November the 17th, so they were also offering their messages to the general public at Wenceslas Square. And this is just the beginning. As some of you might know, 3 weeks ago we visited Dharamsala. We met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We showed him the book. You have the co-author of the book, Kateřina Procházková. He was very pleased. The first thing he did is that he showed on Václav Havel, and again he was very touched because the relationship between both of them is very extraordinary. He's in a good shape. He got new knee. He's turning 90, and next year will be the year of Dalai Lama over here in Prague. We want to organize, as a small NGO, plenty of things. You will be invited to be part of it. The biggest of that, highly probably, will be the invitation of Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts, which was founded in 1959, the year I was born. Immediately after His Holiness get to Dharamsala from the exile, he founded the institute to keep the culture alive. And we are inviting these artists, dancers, musicians. The performance will be in Španělský sál, Spanish Hall at the Prague Castle. It has got a patronage of President Václav Havel. I want to say thanks to American Embassy and especially to Eaton Plus for supporting. Without him and without them and without US department, it wouldn't work. And so you will be invited to all these events. Last but not least, we do a range of activities. On the 10th of March, we gather in front of the Chinese embassy to support Tibetans. Václav Havel was joining us there. You can see that in the book as well. You can walk with us to the Snishka mountain and support Tibetans, because that's the place where we are closest to the Tibetans, on a Himalayan plateau. We are winning at the Constitutional Court against Minister for Interior or Police of the Czech Republic our right of free gathering and freedom of speech and other activities. So you're welcome. You can become a part of Friends of Czech Support Tibet. So please follow on our webpage what we are doing. And I think it's enough. And now I will pass over back to Kateřina. And thank you very much for coming. And thank you very much for supporting Tibet. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Martin Bursík. And now let me ask our technical support for the audio video from Madame Yusra Zaya, Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights from the State Department.
Good evening, everyone, and Tashi Delek. My name is Uzra Zaya, and I'm the United States Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. It's a great honor for me to address you, albeit virtually, as you sit in the beautiful Václav Havel Library, a space that embodies the spirit of freedom, human dignity, and intellectual exchange. These values that Václav Havel himself cherished and fought for, are at the heart of what we are here to celebrate. Tonight, we gather to honor and explore the rich cultural heritage of Tibet, its poetry, literature, and music, as we mark the Czech launch of Kora, a collection of poems and essays by the esteemed Tibetan writer and activist Tenzin Tsundueho. Tenzin has dedicated much of his life to advocating for the rights of Tibetans, and his work is an essential part of ongoing efforts to preserve Tibetan culture and identity. This collection, Kora, offers an intimate glimpse into the heart and soul of the Tibetan experience, its struggles, its resilience, and its beauty. It reminds us of the power of literature to convey the deeply human aspects of life that transcend borders and boundaries. This evening also offers us the rare privilege of hearing the artistic voices of two renowned Tibetan performers, Sonam Dolma, a nomadic singer whose powerful voice carries the soul of Tibet across generations and continents, and Loten Namling, a musician whose work blends the traditions of Tibetan music with modern influences, creating a sound that is uniquely Tibetan, yet universal. Through their art, they remind us that cultural expression is not just a form of beauty, but a powerful act of resistance, a means of asserting one's identity and dignity in the face of hardship and oppression. The combination of literature, poetry, and music you'll experience tonight is a vivid reminder of the importance of cultural preservation in the protection of Tibetan identity. Tibetans have long faced efforts to suppress their unique culture, language, and religious practices. For example, beginning as early as 4 years old, Tibetan children are separated from their families and coerced into PRC government-run boarding schools, where they are purposely restricted from learning their language, celebrating their culture, and practicing Tibetan Buddhism. Yet, throughout history, Tibetans have always found ways to preserve and celebrate their traditions, even in the most difficult of circumstances. The U.S. government, in coordination with like-minded governments, including Czechia, has consistently raised deep concerns about the PRC government's continued human rights abuses against Tibetans. In November of last year, I traveled to Prague to join representatives from over 30 countries for the Ministerial Conference on Freedom of Religion or Belief, where alongside Czech and Dutch colleagues, I voiced our deep concerns regarding the PRC's co-optation of Tibetan Buddhism, including its draconian system of repressive Sinicization policies. This is just one example of deepening global solidarity in support of the rights and freedoms of Tibetans everywhere. We stand with Tibetans in their fight to preserve their religion, language, and culture, and we are committed to supporting their aspirations for a future where their identity is respected and protected. In the words of Václav Havel, the tragedy of modern man is not knowing that he knows less, but that he is willing to accept less. The Tibetan community has never accepted less, They continue to fight for their rights, for their culture, and for their future. As we listen to Tenzin Tsundueho, Sonam Dolma, and Loten Namling tonight, let us remember that we are witnessing the preservation of a cultural legacy that is both beautiful and vital to the world. Finally, I want to thank our hosts, Czechs Support Tibet and the Václav Havel Library, for providing such an inspiring space for dialogue and reflection. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Tenzin, Sonam, and Loten for sharing their extraordinary talents with us and for the courage they demonstrate in continuing to express their heritage through art. Thank you, and enjoy the evening.
And now let me welcome our guests, singer and dancer Sonam Dolma. Such a pleasure having you here. And singer Loten Namling. Pleasure having you as well. And now we are going to have a short... Thank you.
Das dile. Salanda zuye asachigo andro ayuchire Azuchichi attention go Andro akare go Avazun zonzo attention go Andro akiware go asalanda zoye 안정기고 안로와 몰래대 아살란드 주에 아사치고 안로와 유치래 아고에 자주치치 아텐치나고 한도와 밑돌에 아고에 마준 전저에 아텐치나고 한도한지 말에 아고에 아살란드저에 안정기고 Thank you.
So, what an honor to be here tonight. She sang, it's called Lu, from Amdo region of Tibet, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama was born. And I will sing first a Lu from Kam, from Litang. But before that, I want to say something because this is very connected to this place here. I was once, some time ago, invited to sing for His Holiness Dalai Lama and President Václav Havel in Berlin, in the place called Schiller Theater, where so many dignitaries from the European community and, of course, the German government. And there I was asked to sing a song with a jazz band. It was John Coltrane's, some of his most beautiful jazz compositions. And today, it brings me back to that very beautiful moment. So I'm going to sing first this song. It's a Lu, Kamlu, from Litang, from where my father comes from. Nye payu seshung lungbares, serseburu di payu tens. Nye pama ngusho kabure, ngukabure di pama tens. This is the cry of the Tibetan warriors. Now I will sing a song from the 6th Dalai Lama, and this is a song called Kambalamo. And you know, the Tibetans, when we were free, in a free country, when the pilgrims, they came to Lhasa, and after receiving the blessings of Buddha, Avalokiteshvara, and the most holy place on this planet, Lhasa, and then they go back, return to their homes. And when they go back, they have to pass over a pass called Kambalamo. So this pass is one of the highest pass in Tibet, and all these pilgrims, they have to turn back, to pay their last respect to the goddess, Belhamo, and of course, the most wonderful sixth Dalai Lama. They were in a relation on another level. So I imagine that this song was written by the sixth Dalai Lama, because sixth Dalai Lama has written 1,000 songs, so many songs in praise of the land, Buddha, and of course, all the beautiful ladies of Lhasa. And it is said that, I may allow to say this to you, there are many yellow houses in Lhasa, and all those yellow houses were once visited by the sixth Dalai Lama. So, in a great response for this holy visit, they immediately paint the houses yellow for the holy visit. And this is a song, I think, so as I sing, you will hear, these moments, the mountains. Kamba lamuzin herze jiguna, maji beleji lamuzin. Anyway, just because I'm tuning this something new idea came in me that I need to tell you this. This instrument comes from Tibet. During the COVID time, I received this instrument anonymously from Tibet, and somebody sent it to me and said, Loten, please play this instrument, go around the world and sing for Tibet. This was during the COVID time. So muscles. I want to sing this song because this is a song from Tibet, from one of the greatest singers from Tibet in modern times. And in this song, he describes the beginning of Tibet, the Tibetan plateau, and also, as you know, so many small children, men and women, old, have crossed over the high Himalayan mountains. And then the song says, "Who has taken my dreams away?" A lot of our dreams were taken away. And who has withered my shoes? And so on. This song is amazing. When I first heard this song, I had goosebumps. And it was not only the melody, but the meaning, the message. I asked His Holiness Dalai Lama when he was, I think it was the 25th anniversary of the Nobel Peace Prize Day, celebrated in Norway, and His Holiness came. And I told His Holiness, there are so many amazing, beautiful songs, and not only that, but so much message. And we need to carry these messages from Tibet, sung in Tibetan, in the Tibetan melodies, and we need to sing this song to the world. And then I asked for his blessing, and he said, "Loten, carry on this." And then I formed a band called Porokabo. Yesterday, I had the greatest joy, I have a Czech Porokabo, so they were amazing, what's his name, the singer's name? Thomas Klus, and his band, they are so amazing. Within 2 hours, we played 3 songs, Porokabo, and it was magical, as Mr. Thomas Kluk also said that in his media. So I'm going to sing this for you. The song is called Payul, My Homeland. 서진 칼라 팍배 쇼바 수이미름 강라케수 가리르수 수일함중 룽기세수 라유태수 오 kowe michu geduila kowe kariye payul paye 사득하와 차르투주송 차르추미라 콜송 파마분제 닝네 텐중 유라로나 삼중 강정은 뭐 제친살라 담배 닝구 수임은 강락해송 가리르송 수이셰자 캬배담숭 딘바르나숭 오호 가추 게두칼라퉁웨 강주 예두셰나 korwe 강주 파율 파예 사트카와 차르두주숭 차르추미라킬숭 파마분제 닝네 텐중 유라로나 삼중 파예 차추카와 라라니 중숭 파율라니 미라코중
Sonam Loten, thank you very much for amazing performance. Don't be sad, there will be time for more tonight. But now let me welcome, as I mentioned, important part of today's evening is the launch of the Czech edition of the Tenzin Tsundueho's collection of poems and essays entitled Kora. So now let me welcome author here, the writer, poet and activist Tenzin Tsundueho. We have also his book here that we are going to share with you. And let me also introduce other guests that are going to join us for today's debate. Poet and writer, activist, founder of the Berkat and Ashkoka, and Babičky bez hranic, Grannies Without Borders, maybe, Madam Jana Hradilková. Jana, please welcome as well. And the third speaker who is going to join us tonight is a Tibetanist, writer, lecturer, and co-founder of NGO Potala, Zuzana Ondomišiová. Zuzano, welcome as well. And join us. Klidně na kraj. So, let me start with the first question for Tenzin. Tenzin, why is your book called Kora? Can you maybe explain those who didn't have a chance to read it yet or buy it? Can you maybe tell us more about the title and what was behind? Thank you.
So just as introduced, my name is Tenzin Tsundueho. I'm a Tibetan writer and activist. I'm based in Dharamshala. This is my third time here in Czech Republic. I'm almost likely to call this my second home, but I'm not quite there. I'm still a stateless refugee living in India. It's just that Czech Republic's love invited me, brought me here to read poetry, tell stories of Tibet, and continue to see possibility of freedom for Tibet. My book, Kora, originally written in English, this is the book in English, first published in the year 2002. It was first published at the time, and since then this has come back in so many different new editions. So far this book sold more than 50,000 copies in English, and it's been translated into 17 different languages. And Czech Kora is the 17th language edition that we are getting to see of Kora. The idea of Kora is what we have in Christian practice, circumambulation, or in Hindu or Jain culture, what we call parikrama or pradakshina, where we, out of inspiration, we go around an object of worship. It may be a stupa, or a lake, or a mountain, or a temple, or an object of worship. We go around that. And it is not just a physical journey to go around and finish the circle, but through the course of that physical journey, one reflects upon the need for love and compassion and kindness. When you go on a trip like this, you're not supposed to think about yourself. You're supposed to think about other living beings, human beings, and even microorganisms who may be in suffering, who may be disadvantaged. And the good thing is, after completing one circle, by then you would value your life more, and you would have seen that you are able to stretch yourself to others. So that physical, spiritual journey is Kora in Tibetan language. So in this book, there is a story set in Dharamshala, where there are two Tibetans who are both refugees, but from different generations. So they meet accidentally on the journey while going around Kora, around the path of Lingkor in Dharamshala, where on the top of the hill is the residence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tsuglakang temple. And they, in the story, they go on a Kora, and the conversation they have, and towards the end they achieve deep intergenerational understanding. And this is the inspiration of the story Kora. But then the book is not just the story. There are 8 poems, 2 stories, and essays. So that is the book Kora, and I'm really happy that there are 2 of the translators here, and I'm missing Wit today. He's yes, so he is someone who hugely contributed in translating, really working hard, because this has been almost about 2.5 years in getting the book out in Czech, and it had seen many translations, many versions of translations, and yes, this is one of the first ones, yeah. So these were earlier published in handmade papers like this. And when it was in this stage, I had come here, and we did reading at the Himalaya. No, the Potala. Yeah, Potala tea shop, and also Himalaya. Himalayan Center. Yeah, so we had done that kind of reading, and reading was not just about the linguistic translation, but for all of us, an understanding. I was trying to understand the Czech culture, history, language, the importance, and what went behind the revolution that with which Czech won independence from Russian invasion, and how Czech was able to throw out the communist dictatorship and won genuine freedom and democracy. So these were the things that I was understanding, and through these translations, they said, of course they are going to speak about it, they said how they were slowly trying to understand the idea of Tibet, which is so very far away from here, and it's not every day or it's not, all the time that Czech people are able to go to Tibet or even Dharamshala.
Thank you very much, Tenzila. Maybe one question, and now the tricky part will start, because when I'm going to approach Zuzana and Jana, I'm going to switch into Czech. So you really need the ones who are not able to speak Czech, the headphones. So maybe, Zuzana and Jana, how difficult it was to translate the book Kora? Did you encounter any difficulties during the process of translation?
Já možná na začátek řeknu, že já jsem se nepodílela přímo na těch překladech, ale fungovala jsem coby odborný korektor a vlastně uváděla jsem třeba do nějakého kontextu speciálně výrazy a podobně. Takže tady určitě náleží slovo Janě.
Přesně tak. A moc ti za to děkujeme. Byl to proces dobrodružný. My jsme měli už praxi, vlastně, jak už bylo řečeno, poháněčem mesků, jak se nazval Vítek Kremlička. Byl Vítek Kremlička. A ta myšlenka vznikla už dost dávno, víc než přes 10 lety, kdy jsme překládali první autorku, disidentku Tsering Ezer a její knihu Tibet srdce, Tibet mysli, která je taky vystavená tam s těma knížkama. A když jsme uváděli tu knížku v život a dělali jsme její čtení, tak jsme objevili na Karlínském náměstí knížku přesně tuto, na tom krásném rýžovém papíru. A pustili jsme se do překládání. Takže už jsme měli zkušenost s překládáním Tsering a já jako překladatelka musím říct, že to pro mě bylo velké dobrodružství. Vlastně jsme to překládali z angličtiny, ale i jsme to původně, ty překlady konzultovali s paní Lomovou, která měla originály k dispozici. Takže to byla celá taková práce a já jsem měla pocit, že mě to hodně k tomu Tibetu přiblížilo. Bylo to moc fajn.
Jenom možná doplnila. Ty jsi zmínila synoložku Olgu Lomovou a Tsering Ezer je sice autorka dizidentská, která je tibetsko-čínského původu a píše v čínštině. Takže vy jste překládali vlastně z konzultací z čínštiny. Tenzin pro změnu píše v angličtině, nebo aspoň tyhle ty eseje a básně napsal originálně v angličtině, nikoli v tibetštině. A já tady jenom ještě zmíním, že velkou tlustou knihu esejů Tsering Ezer vydalo potom později nakladatelství Verzon a myslím, že je ještě na trhu.
Děkuji mnohokrát. Já mám spoustu dotazů, ale možná, jestli by nebylo dobré přečíst třeba jeden z textů, ať se naladíme a mě se lépe ptá poté. Jano, mohu vás poprosit, jestli bychom možná mohli začít, jestli se nepletu, měla by to být báseň, když v Dharamsale prší, že bychom s ní začali.
Je to tak?
V tomto podzimním počasí se nám hodí.
Funguje to? Jo. To je taková úplně kultovní báseň Tsundueho. Když v Dharamsale prší. Když v Dharamsale prší, dešťové kapky navlékají boxerské rukavice. Tisícovky jich srážejí se v pádu a buší do mého útočiště. Pod plechovou střechou moje útočiště pláče a skrápí slzami moje lůžko i papíry. Někdy průzračný déšť přichází ze zákulisí mého útočiště, zrádné zdi zdvíhají paty a vpouštějí tak malou povodeň do mého útočiště. Sedím na svém ostrovanském lůžku a zírám na svoji zaplavenou zemi. Poznámky ke svobodě, vzpomínky na vězeňské dny, dopisy od kamarádů ze školy, chlebové drobky a nudle magy, deroucí se hbitě k povrchu jako náhlý záblesk zapomenuté vzpomínky. 3 měsíce tortury, monzun věhličí borovic, čistě omyté štíty Himaláje se lesknou větřním slunci. Než se déšť stiší a přestane bičovat moje útočiště, musím ještě zpevnit plechovou střechu, která pochází z časů britské Indie. Moje útočiště hostilo mnoho bezdomovců. Nyní v něm přebývají promyky a myšky, ještěrky a pavouci a svým dílem taky já. Být doma v podnájmu obnáší značně ponižující existenci. Má kašmírská bytná se v 80 nemůže vrátit domů. Pořádáme často turnaje v krásách. Kašmír proti Tibetu. Každovečerně se vracím do svého pronajatého útočiště. Ale ještě se nechystám umřít. Bylo by to jako útěk odsud. Jako moje útočiště odmítám naříkat. Plakal jsem někdy ve vězení v okamžicích zoufalství. Bylo by to jako útěk odsud. Odmítám plakat. Můj pokoj je vlhký dost.
Děkuji. Děkuji, thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I'm truly enjoying sitting here, listening to Czech in one ear and listening to the English in my own inner ear. At the same time, there is Tibetan who is raring to go out, but I'm not speaking Tibetan yet. The beauty of translation is this, that whether it's the idea of a country or the concept of rain, they mean so very differently. I'm sure it must have meant so very differently in Czech. But I'm someone who can speak Hindi. I'm from India. So बारिश की एक माहौल है, एक experience बिल्कुल अलग रहता है. And then charpa, what we say, ngazo phuge nali ya chapas laga kole ya ko nyamnyong manda shuchik redwa. So there are not many Tibetans, but among ourselves, chawa laga kole ya inji ki rain la di remendo ya ko chawa la de pe nyamnyong manda shuch redwa. But this is the experience in English. So I'm going to read the poem When It Rains in Dharamshala in English. So this is Tibetan experience set in Dharamshala in India, but written in English and now translated into Czech. So there is a lot of translation happening here. So therefore I'm so very excited intellectually. There's great sense of joy on the inside. So I'm going to read the poem When It Rains in Dharamshala. Now, importance of Dharamshala is to be said here. Dharamshala is in North India, in a state of Himachal Pradesh. That's the place where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives. It is also the place which hosts the Tibetan government in exile, which is the seed of future independent Tibet. Almost about 16,000 Tibetan refugees live there. Some of the most important institutions, monasteries, schools are there. And at the foot of the hill is where I live with 4 other friends in a British bungalow, not in a very good condition, but we nonetheless live together in an old British bungalow, which is about 100 years old. So it is that story. What happens to that house, a British legacy in India, when it rains? And rains in Dharamshala is not like what we say in English, it rains cats and dogs. But in Dharamshala, it rains cats, dogs and donkeys. Matlab, itna barish ke aap, you feel as if there is a waterfall on your head. And it goes on for 3 months, July, August, September. And that's the time when, firstly, the rain comes in the form of a fog. And you feel you are in the clouds. But that surreptitious cloud comes in, becomes fog, enters into your house through the creaks of the door, window, and comes into your room. You cannot push them out because you cannot hold on to them. Then they get into your closet, into your clothes, and they come out of mushrooms. Mushrooms grow out of your clothes. Real mushrooms grow out of, and your clothes, you cannot wear that kind of clothes. Yeah, this happens in Dharamshala. So this is the poem I'm writing about. And also you must know, I'm not just a poet. I'm a hardcore activist. I've been jailed by China, in Tibet. I've been jailed in India because I protested Xi Jinping. So I've been to jail 16 times. I'm now jail expert. So with that kind of experience, I'm writing this poem, When It Rains in Dharamshala. When it rains in Dharamshala, raindrops wear boxing gloves. When it rains in Dharamshala, raindrops wear boxing gloves. Thousands of them come crashing down and beat my room. Under its tin roof, my room cries from inside and wets my bed, my papers. Sometimes the clever end comes from behind my room. The treacherous walls lift their heels and allow a small flood into my room. I sit on my island nation bed and watch my country in flood. Notes on freedom, memoirs of my prison days, letters from college friends, crumbs of bread and Maggi noodles rise sprightly to the surface, like a sudden recovery of a forgotten memory. 3 months of torture, monsoon in the needle-leaved pines, Himalaya rinsed clean, glistens in the evening sun. Until the rain calms down and stops beating my room, I need to console my tin roof, who has been on duty from the British Raj. This room has sheltered many homeless people. Now captured by mongooses and mice, lizards and spiders, and partly rented by me. A rented room for a home is a humbling existence. My Kashmiri landlady at 80 cannot return home. We often compete for beauty, Kashmir or Tibet. Every evening I return to my rented room. But I'm not going to die this way. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry like my room. I had cried enough in prisons and in small moments of despair. There has got to be some way out of here. I cannot cry. My room is wet enough.
Thank you very much, Tenzin. You just mentioned it, that you are not only poet, but you are also activist. So let me maybe ask or quote one of your texts when you wrote. You say more than 1 million Tibetans have been killed, 6,000 monasteries destroyed, thousands still in prisons, and all you have done is raise slogans. So could be your work seen as resistant literature? is that how you see it, and how actually in one body can be poet and also activist? How are you feeling? Is there something more, or who is winning maybe tonight, poet or activist?
I think the most powerful thing in the world is story. It may be a very powerful country, or maybe a person, or maybe a dictator, maybe a terrorist, maybe a billionaire, even a trillionaire. Essentially, it's a story. And what matters is who writes the story. China is, of course, very powerful. There are a lot of money and weapons. But I sincerely believe that one smile of His Holiness the Dalai Lama is more powerful than China's wealth, weapons, all put together. That's what I'm saying. And therefore, what the thing with which we bring about change is the narrative. What narrative are you creating? What story are you telling? So, you see, as an activist, of course, I go out and in the street and protest and sit and fast. I've led hundreds, thousands of people together in marches and rallies. I've climbed buildings. I've been to prison. 16 times I've been to jail. But that's a physical aspect of it. But there is also the storytelling aspect of it. And therefore, sometimes I think that there is space for activism, but there is also space for writing poetry. And now I tell you why poetry. Why not stories? Why not novels? Why not plays? Sometimes I feel our words are not enough. Words have been misused by people. And therefore I resort to images, metaphors, where I say more than just the words. And when I resort to imagination, the language of imagination, where I give people not rain but waterfall. Where I am saying, for example, in one of my poems, I'm saying, when I am making this proposal to say, can I stay in your house? I am saying, let me sleep under your bed and I will watch the TV, not with you, but in the mirror. So, poetry speaks in a language where words fail. Because poetry is a language of imagination. It goes out to create a language which is universal, which then again can be translated into so many different languages. But developing such a language to write poetry requires more than just grammar, requires more than just the command over language. Developing a language for poetry requires that imagination. So, this is why I write poetry, because I believe that at one point of time, poetry is much more powerful than all the guns and money put together.
Thank you. Bych jenom ještě doplnila, že mě přitom napadlo, že jeden z nejoblíbenějších sloganů listopadu 89, možná se na to pamatuješ, bylo budoucnost patří imaginaci. Thank you. Some are describing, Tenzin, you as the new and the most visible face of the restless children of the Dalai Lama. Are you feeling like a restless child of Dalai Lama?
I'm definitely restless. If someone who has been to jail 16 times, went to 23 different countries, and all over India, as an activist, as a speaker, and also as a writer, then who is not restless? I'm very, very restless. But in the way that I am enjoying this journey as an activist. And what is most exciting about my work that I've designed myself, where there is no salary or power, position, or office, or designation, or promotion, nothing like that. What is most, enjoyable thing about that I've, designed for myself as an activist, as a writer, is that I'm so inspired by the idea of freedom. The possibility of making Tibet free once again is so very powerful, and that has always inspired me to do it. And the better one is that I'm doing it under His Holiness's direct leadership. Just look at this. China is a threat to so many countries. In Tibet, in a country of 7 million Tibetans, there are more than 20 million Chinese. And because of Chinese invasion, not only have we lost almost about 6,000 monasteries, we lost 1 million Tibetans. And now there is a situation where China is teaching Chinese language to Tibetan children. In schools, forced colonial boarding schools. And we fear in the next 5, 10, 15 years, Tibetan children may not be speaking Tibetan, they may be speaking Chinese. Tibetan nomads and farmers have been pushed out of their traditional ancestral land. They're now being pushed into artificial villages. And those mountains, valleys, pasture land are being bombed. And China is extracting lithium, gold, copper, and rare earths. Make Chinese products. And they're selling it to countries around the world. We are in a situation where we have not only lost the independence of our country to China, that entire world is actually sitting on us. That kind of a difficulty is where we are today. And yet, with His Holiness's leadership, we still believe that independence of Tibet is possible, and they're through non-violence. Because we believe that at the moment, many of the Western countries may be trading with China, may be fallen dependent on the Chinese supply chains. But many of the Western countries today are waking up. They know that China is not only their dependent country, but China is weaponizing trade, and they are taking advantage of this. So Western countries are waking up today. In a way, United States this year, when they came out with this change in the foreign policy saying that Tibet was free and independent country, unlike what China is saying, the Tibetan people have right to self-determination, this is the most powerful policy change the United States has done. India is one country who had given us shelter right from 1959 when His Holiness the Dalai Lama had to leave Tibet and come to India. People like us, I'm the second generation Tibetans. My generation, who had never seen Tibet, we never lost the hope because we live in a country of India where there is freedom, democracy, where we seek from them how to run our future government. Our hope lived because there is that space. So we are this indomitable people. So today when China is showing all the weapons and things, we are actually laughing at them. Because what China is doing, amassing wealth and threatening other people, not just Tibet. China has occupied East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia, Manchuria. China has taken away the democracy in Hong Kong. China is now threatening to invade Taiwan. China is now taking away natural resources from Africa, South America. Many of those people are not happy with that. This is new colonialism. China is a serious threat. And I'm not speaking against China. I'm saying that Chinese government that Xi Jinping is running is a threat to Chinese people. I'm working with Chinese people who are fighting for freedom, democracy in their own country, but their voices are snuffed out. So therefore, this is a time where Western countries can stand up to the values that you have always held for yourself, freedom and dignity and justice. And of course, I have no qualms in saying that Western countries have benefited at the cost of Tibet. Therefore, you have a responsibility to speak for Tibet, because you have benefited by trading and supply chains from China. You have benefited at our cost. And it's not just because I just happen to be speaking here in Czech Republic, but including United States, most of these countries have benefited our cause. So therefore, you have a responsibility to speak up for the freedom of Tibet.
Thank you. There's maybe a question for Zuzana. Zuzana, you as expert, do you think that the Czech Republic is supporting Tibet enough? Should we do more? Thank you. There's someone who can be invited to the podium. So.
No, určitě, co to je dost, nikdy není dost. A samozřejmě, když se podíváme na dějiny vztahů Československa nebo později České republiky s Čínou, s Tibetem, vůbec prostě postoji k těmto zemím, tak v 50. 60. letech jsme s Čínou sdíleli komunistickou politiku a prostě byli jsme kamarádi, spolupracovali jsme ideologicky a politicky. No a když se po roce 89 ta situace změnila, my jsme pro sebe získali teda svobodný demokratický režim, tak byť v těch nejlepších dobách za Václava Havla, tak nikdy nedošlo k tomu, že by Česká republika nabídla třeba tibetským uprchlíkům místo k přestěhování, prostě k pobytu a aktivně nějakým způsobem je třeba integrovala do společnosti. Druhá věc je, což je samozřejmě asi složité, i při tom všem obchodování s Čínou, jsem v podstatě nikdy neslyšela, že by někdo obchodoval s tibetskými firmami a vozil teda, když už zboží tibetské, tak přímo z Tibetu. Jako chápu, že to je politicky složité, ale i ty biznismeni by se měli prostě dožadovat tedy rovnoprávného přístupu se svými obchodními protějšky například.
Děkuji. Já teď možná skočím k tomu slovu svoboda, které tady několikrát zaznělo. Jano, jestli se mohu možná zeptat vás, vy jste tady měla ten odkaz na český dissent, na to, co se tady dělo v roce 89 během sametové revoluce, ale možná můžeme se podívat i, jak vůbec Tibet, volání po svobodě z Tibetu, rezonuje v undergroundu, včetně toho českého, jestli nějak rezonovalo, jak bylo to tady zmíněno, bavili jsme se o česko-tibetských vztazích, mimochodem jsou skvěle popsány v té knize, kterou jsme vám tady ukazovali, takže jestli vás zajímá toto téma, určitě v kapitole 4 možná se můžete dočíst. Ale pojďme se na to podívat z druhé strany. Jak myslíte, že to bylo v tom undergroundu nebo je dnes? Obohacuje nás Tibet, inspiruje vás umělce, spisovatele?
No tak, jak už jsem řekla, my jsme se toho tibetské poezie v exilu, vlastně poezie aktivistů v exilu chopili, ale spíš, když si to tak jako promítnu, co se dělo od těch 90. let až dosud, tak myslím si, že a taky myslím, že na to Tibet, teda Tsundu poukázal, že těch spolků, které tady postupně vznikaly v Čechách, je docela hodně a jsou to spolky, které jsou velice užitečný a každý ten z těch spolků má nějakou svou vlastní identitu a připadá mi hrozně fajn, jak se to vyvíjí. Vlastně každoročně, když je Lozar, tak se sejdou v Novoměstské radnici. Oprav mě, jestli to teda už to tam není.
Už ale bývalo bude. To je.
No. Ale myslím si, že že v tom nějakým způsobem ten odkaz českého undergroundu je. Já jsem teda měla napsat do té knížky taky kapitolu, spíš na téma paralela českého disentu a českého undergroundu s tibetským aktivismem v exilu, což je téma, který mi přijde docela pozoruhodný a zajímavý, protože se blížíme v téhleté době, všichni víme, co se děje, co se stalo v Sýrii, co se děje v Palestině, co se děje okolo nás. Tak v téhleté době velkého násilí a vzmachu teda násilí okolo nás, tak ta myšlenka Dalajlámy a myšlenka nenásilného odporu začíná být čím dál tím, nebo je čím dál tím aktuálnější. A že vlastně to, co se dělo v 70. letech, 80. letech u nás, v undergroundu, to znamená vlastně vznik paralelní polis a formulace života v pravdě mi velice rezonuje s tím, co hlásá Dalajláma a to, co se odráží i v tom tvůrčím gestu, jak hudebním, vizuálním, tak básnickým. A slyšíme to ve všech těch básničkách a textech.
Děkuji. Jestli Zuzka doplní, prosím.
Já se tady hrnu k mikrofonu, že bych to doplnila, protože Jana vlastně se vyjádřila až k 90. letům, ne tak úplně k době předtím, což tedy byl ten pravý underground, i když myslím, že underground pokračuje i do dneška v podstatě mimo nějakou hlavní oficiálnější kulturu. A já jsem tady předtím zmiňovala, že v 50. letech nebo až do 60. let jsme s Čínou sdíleli ideologii a vlastně politické postoje. Nicméně, když se Sovětský svaz rozkmotřil s oficiální maoistickou tedy ideologií v Číně, tak i Československo přestalo vlastně dávat k dispozici nějaké informace, zprávy. V dobovém tisku například se v roce 59 psalo ještě i o útěku Dalajlamy z Lhasy a podobně, z Tibetu. Ale potom vlastně nastalo takové ticho. Ale musím říct, že určitě v undergroundu nebo v takové neoficiální kultuře, že třeba Tibet rezonoval i u malířů nebo v hudbě. Já to nedokážu vyjmenovat, ale vím, že kolem mě vždycky se vyskytly nějaká díla, kde vlastně lidi se k tomu vztahovali nebo umělci se k tomu vztahovali, ale dá se říct, že hodně přes tu spirituální rovinu, protože o tom hmotném materiálním se tady, nebo o tom, co se v Tibetu ve skutečnosti děje v těch 60., 70., 80. letech, tak se vědělo velmi málo. Nebyl internet, necestovalo se tam. Tibet se začal spolu s Čínou otvírat pro turistiku vlastně až na konci 80. let. A musím říct, že už od roku 87 první čeští turisté vyjížděli velmi dobrodružně s cílem dostat se do Tibetu. A to byly vlastně třeba i první vlastně autentické i snímky, nahrávky, filmy, dokument, který přinesl zobrazení té reálné situace a vlastně skutečná setkání s Tibeťany přímo teda v jejich zemi, anebo potom potažmo samozřejmě v exilu v Indii a podobně. No. A potom samozřejmě s těmi změnami po roce 89 a po vlastně pozvání jeho svatosti Dalajlamy k té první návštěvě, ke kterého pozval Václav Havel, co by první československý prezident, tak se pochopitelně ta situace změnila. Začalo se o Tibetu, těch informací se sem dostávalo více a cíleně právě začaly potom vznikat i ty neziskovky. A musím ale ještě upozornit, že první v podstatě společnost přátel Tibetu vznikla už někdy v roce 87-8, čili ještě i za toho minulého režimu. A to aspoň pokud vím, byly první snahy dostat sem nějaké cyklostylované informace o stavu lidských práv, o politice, o těch historických změnách ve 20. století.
Děkuji. Když jsi zmínila Václava Havla, tak mě možná dovolte teď zase přepnout do angličtiny a zeptat se na Havlovu esej Moc bezmocných. Let me ask maybe about Václav Havel and the inspiration of power of powerless. For example, the Václav Havel's essay inspired the writer Cheng Piao and some Tibetan author as well. So let me ask, what is for you the living or live in the true? And can be this inspiration for you as well?
Definitely. Václav Havel was not just the president who became, but he was essentially a writer and a playwright. So therefore I consider him as more of an artist, that he had to, after the revolution, he had to play that important role as leader of the country. But what I also learned is the word Václav is the Swati Václav, is the deity. In Tibetan we say deity, English word deity, is the spirit god of this country. And I saw the idol there, and just behind that was the spot where Jan Palak gave his life. So it was such, when I first came here about 10 years ago, my friend Marie Yirkova, she took me there. And when I saw that there was a place where Jan Palak gave his life in the form of self-immolation, it was the same time when a lot of self-immolations were going on inside Tibet. And there I was seeing a spot which inspired freedom of Czechoslovakia at that time, in 1969. So this was the place which inspired the revolution in Czech Republic. And then, of course, former President Václav Havel came into this position to not only lead the movement, spent years in jail, and then after the revolution being successful and finding freedom and democracy in this country, he took the leadership as the president. So you see, the movement of an individual as an artist, as an activist who goes to jail and then taking the leadership, and then once he found freedom, he wasn't saying, oh, we are now free and independent, but he was giving solidarity with His Holiness. In 1989, there were so many movements happening all across Europe. Soviet Union collapsed. There was unification of Germany. There were many other movements that were happening for example, in Hungary. And the collapse of Soviet Union also brought about so many new countries who emerged as a free and independent country, who was for the first time finding themselves. And that was the year when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I was in 9th standard in school. So when we first saw the image of His Holiness receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, when we first saw the image, at the time I couldn't immediately understand the importance of Nobel Prize. But we had seen that year, early that year, firstly there were protests in Tibet. Then there was protests in Tiananmen Square. In our school, for a home, for about 50 students, there was one television owned by our home parent, and we were able to see on television how the Chinese PLA soldiers killed their own students. It shocked us, because we thought that the government, people, everybody is there against us. Then on that television, we saw, I was in school, we saw that the Chinese PLA soldiers were literally shooting machine guns at their own university students. You know, student movement, whether it was of the movement here in this country in 1989 or in various other countries, student movements had always given a new direction and shape to nation building. And Tiananmen Square was one important possibility of bringing freedom and democracy in that country, but it was crushed brutally. And today we are getting to know that more than 10,000 university students were killed. And many Western countries, they condemned China's action. But slowly for Western countries, trade and supply chain, they revert and started to make China one of the most favored nations for the trade. So this was discouraging for us, even as a refugee. Of course, we couldn't do anything against the Western countries, but we saw that things were being normalized. So, but then, for us, the idea is never to give up. The strength of freedom, the inspiration that we seek from the possibility of bringing back democracy to our own country and independence of Tibet. These are the things that has nothing to do with what other people will do or not do. It completely depends on us, that our insistence on the freedom and independence of Tibet was a sole force with which we continue to work. So we have now come to a situation where we may be able to regain independence of our own country. And I could see that it is happening in my generation. And I'm telling you, my generation, we will take His Holiness the Dalai Lama from exile to our own country.
Jano, chcete něco dodat, nebo ne?
Jenom koukám na ty hodiny, nevím, jak dlouho,
aby nás nevyhnali, to je pravda. Já jsem přemýšlela, jestli bychom ještě nepřečetli aspoň jednu báseň, což by byl čas pro to, aby vy, kteří jste tady v sále, si připravili otázky, jestli nějaké máte. We are going to read one poem, and maybe that can be the time for you who are here with us and would like to ask the questions to prepare them. And after we will have 10 minutes for the questions from the audience. So, Jano, mohu vás tedy poprosit o jednu, možná vaši oblíbenou?
Should I read Pedro's food? Okay. Pedro's food? Okay. Pedrova flétna. Pedro, co máš ve své flétně? Máš tam chlapce, který se ztratil matce a hledá ji po celém městě? Bosýma nohama pleskaje po mokré dlažbě? Pedro, řekni mi, co máš ve své flétně? Je to tichý nářek děvčete těhotného v 16, vyhozeného z domova, co teď žije ve veřejném parku za záchodky? Zajímavé, jak duješ do pahýlu plastikové rourky a jak ji oživuješ ve flétnu. Píšťalu bez očí, bez uší, bez úst. Hvízdající, plačící a zpívající. Hvízdající jehlovými hroty šipek, šipkami jako žihadly stejnými jako srdce sov s pápěřím v uších. Pedro, řekni mi, co máš ve své flétně? Je tam skřípění okenních pantů, dívčí pláč? Nebo je tam oddychování hocha, který teď znaven spí na policejní stanici? Pedro, řekni mi, co máš ve své flétně?
Thank you for the translation. So this poem was written in 2005. This was written in South Africa, and that was first time I was going outside India. I'd never been to any other country other than South Africa until that time, year 2005. So there I was in Durban, in South Africa. among a group of almost about 100 poets from so many different parts of the world. And we were told to write a poem in a span of 5 days. And we were told that on the last day, we should read the poem to a huge gathering on the last day. Many of our other poets, they said, why should we write a poem in a span of five days? It's unfair to force poets to write a poem. We were told not to venture out into the city because there are daytime muggers and things like that. But nonetheless, I went out and saw different places. And Durban really was such an interesting place. It's a very youthful, so many youngsters I could see in Durban. So this poem was inspired by Durban, the city, and also partly inspired by one musician called Pedro Sanchez. He's a musician, Spanish musician, living in Cape Town. And he's such a music man that he could touch anywhere, beat anywhere, and he could make music. And once he brought out this stump of a plastic pipe, just a little bit of a plastic pipe. He was blowing from top and using one finger from below. He could make a flute out of that. And that was inspiration for me to write this poem. Now, why I was telling this story is very often poets are asked, what is your inspiration? How have you started to write such a poem? So there is always a story behind a poem, and that was the poem. So I'm now going to read this poem in English. So the title is Pedro's Flute. What I'm happy about this poem particularly is the kind of a musicality I've been able to achieve in this poem is something that is very close to me. Pedro, Pedro, what do you have in your flute? Is there a little boy who lost his mother and is running all around the town, bare feet, slapping the wet cobblestone? Pedro, Pedro, tell me, what do you have in your flute? Is that a soft moaning of a young girl, pregnant at 16, thrown out of her house, now living in the public park behind the toilets? Wonder how you blow a stump of a plastic pipe and how it comes alive into a flute with no eye or ear or mouth, whistling, now crying, now singing, whistles that turn into small needle arrows, arrows that sting even the hearts of the owls who have hair in the ears. Pedro, Pedro, tell me, what do you have in your flute? Is that whistle in the hinges of the window the cry of the young girl? Or is that the breathing of the little boy who is now tired and sleeping at the police station? Pedro, Pedro, tell me, what do you have in your flute? Yeah, one of the joys of poetry is how it comes alive when there is such a performance. Yeah, so poetry is not just the written word and the script. It's purely the sound of the musicality that is there, and when there is such a breath coming about, that's when poetry really comes alive. And I'm as a poet, as a writer, I'm quite biased to this art. And usually we bias in such a way we think that this is the higher art because the language of imagination, not just of the senses. So of course, our other artists will not agree, but this is how we actually look at it.
Thank you. As I promised 10 minutes for the question, I know it's not probably enough. I have still 20 questions written here that I didn't have a chance to ask, so maybe next time. Please ask anything that you would like to about the book, poetry, Tibet. Just raise your hands, please introduce yourself, and I'm happy to give you... Actually, we have another microphone over there. So, if there are any questions, if not...
Tenzina Tsundueho, Kirang de Poinpe. I have a question. Do you plan to also compose some songs or to join forces together maybe with Loten to make music out of your poems?
No, music is something which I don't have any, sensibilities for it. Most importantly, because I have no mathematics. And without mathematics, I believe there's no music. Truly. I like to listen to music. I have a lot of respect to the musicians who play and also sing. But let me keep myself to what little thing I can do, writing poetry and telling stories. Thank you.
So maybe, Tenzila, before there will be another question from the audience, let me ask. Yes.
I'm the worst mathematician. Sorry. I'm the worst mathematician, but I sing. I have a different opinion on that. But it's your stage. So
is there any question? If not, let me ask one. What about the future? There was a question. If you are going to start with the writing the songs or sing the songs, or what are your plans for the future? Maybe another poems or essays or.
Yeah, thank you. So at the moment, I'm working on a book. This is quite an ambitious kind of a book. The book I've been working for almost about 15 years. It's going to be a book of Tibetan refugee lives. It's non-fiction, but written like a collection of adventures. So this book is going to be full of adventures of so many snippets, anecdotes, past memory, mixed up of memory and false memories. But these are memories that people told me, how they met their wife or girlfriend, and how their girlfriend or their wife or husband are telling a different story. How a brother and a sister remember the same experience at home differently. So I'm always excited about the idea of memory. Today, while being together with Loten, there was some contestation of how we actually remember something. And we believe in how we remember, but sometimes memory is politicized in such a way that we remember the same thing differently in different ages because now suitable and it's more beneficial for you to present yourself in certain other ways. So you see, just that idea of memory as real story, but how it gets fictionalized, because we truly believe that we would like to remember certain things in certain other ways. So, but then these are real stories of people who lived amazing lives of struggle, resilience, heroic Tibetans who lived as nomads, farmers, working as soldiers in the Indian army, or who escaped through so many different countries and landed up in the United States, or who were monks at one point of time, gave up their robes and vows and became a soldier fighting for Tibet, and then once again coming back to living life of a monk or a nun. So amazing stories I have. So that is a book that I'm myself, firstly, so very excited that this book is finally coming together. And that's something that I'm looking forward for in the next maybe 1 year or so. Then again, we'll have to wait for Czech translation.
I'm sure that Jana and Zuzana and Vita are ready. So looking forward to that. Thank you. Any other question from the audience?
Thank you very much, Tenzin Tsundueho. You're in fact the only Tibetan who raised the issue, a sort of inconvenient truth. You are telling us that we in fact built China, and that we and that the trade with China, in fact, in reality, is more than our understanding the universality of human rights. So this is an inconvenient through. My question is, what do you consider as a trigger? As what do you think will deliver change in China, and then in Tibet? What's going to happen?
Thank you.
What's your imagination?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for responding to something very sensitive thing that I said. Thank you for responding to that. I think for a long time the West and China slept together for a mutual benefit. Now that China has captured Western market, China is dictating terms against the West. China is making trade a punitive measure. You see, you listen to us, or else we're not going to supply this or that. Because by now, China has killed much of the Western product. When I was in school, I used to have this American ball pen called Big. A yellow pen that even today I have. A ball pen that I loved writing with. I'm going to show you. This pen. This used to come with a brass nib. I used to have one. This was the dearest pen that I used to have. At the bottom of it, it was written "Made in USA." Now you don't see that. You know, for a Tibetan refugee, it was such a prized possession. You know, this was the pen that I used to write. Now it's entire plastic. I don't know whether, you know, how the thing is. But, you know, there are so many things. As a refugee, we learned from the West. We always have this great idea of the West compared to China, which is a threat and a danger to us. Now what is happening is that China has killed much of the Western industries, made Western countries fallen dependent on China, and turning that, weaponizing trade and punishing the West. Now it's time that the West is waking up. What monster have we nurtured up until today? And I'm saying this has nothing to do with the people of China. People of China want democracy and freedom just like all of us. It's a common aspiration. People of China have no freedom and democracy. So the corporate companies in the West have taken advantage of the dictatorship in China and the occupation of Tibet. So my imagination is that the West must regain the lost dignity and must repay for the benefits the West has reaped out of people of China and also the China's occupied countries. There's always a more dignified way of living because you have the choice. We don't have. We are struggling through the difficult path, being the refugee, being the people who are oppressed. You know, with us we have violent law. You know, a Chinese dissident living in the United States and speaking for the Chinese people who want freedom and democracy. You know, so the imagination is, will the West now stand for the freedom that you have enjoyed, that you would want the people of China and also people in China's occupied countries to also have the same freedom and democracy? Wouldn't a free and democratic China and a liberated Tibet be a better trade partnership for Europe, for America? Then you can trade fairly. This is all that we ask.
Thank you. Maybe Zuzana or Jana, do you want to add something for the end? I saw that you were...
Já si sem tam dělám poznámku, ale to, na co jsem myslela, když Jana upozornila na ty hodiny, že v podstatě od toho umění, což je dobře, jsme se vůbec nedostali do té druhé polohy více aktivistické, i když samozřejmě Tenzin to má propojené. A že tady bylo připravená i četba z některých těch esejí, které vlastně jsou takovým protipólem těch básní. No ale nezbývá mi, než apelovat, kupte si knížku a přečtěte si je doma.
Přesně tak. Jestli se nepletu, tak je ještě možnost si vzadu koupit knihu a dokonce tady bude i prostor, abyste si přišli třeba pro autogram. To je velká šance. Jano, pro vás ještě něco, jestli...
No, já asi nemám nic moc, ještě abych dodávala. Je to, jako aktivismus je čím dál tím aktuálnější skrze právě to umění. A my jsme si říkali ještě, že bychom hrozně rádi věděli, jestli máte vy, naši přátelé, teda z tibetského exilu kontakty a jestli existuje dialog s mladší generací, třeba i z čínského disentu. Protože tady, jak jsme viděli včera v kampusu, tak ta přítomnost českých studentů byla mocná a atmosféra byla skvělá. A jestli tady ještě pořád organizátor je, tak moc díky. Bylo to výborný. A tak by mě zajímala ta generace Číňanů a Tibeťanů v exilu, jestli ještě něco k tomu.
Well, I may be 50, but the people I work with are in their 20s. We have a very strong culture of nurturing the younger generation. I was trained, inspired by the older generation. In the Tibetan community, there is a proverb which says that "Sare dambatan dore pimu," which means that when we eat food, we keep grinding the food sometimes in this part of the mouth, sometimes on the other. And when we walk, the knees take turns in taking you forward. If it is just one knee stepping forward, you can never get anywhere. So the knees take turns in taking you forward. It's a Tibetan proverb. So for me, the idea of Tibet came from my grandmother. She used to tell us stories. Now just see, I was in South India, in the heat and jungle in South India. And my grandmother was telling us stories of snow mountains, yaks, apples, things we couldn't see in South India. But I believed in her stories. And an imagination of a country came into my mind. I had never seen Tibet. But I believed with her that my grandmother came from a kind of fairy tale kind of a country where there is snow. We didn't know what snow is. But we believed that there is a country far away from Karnataka where there are snow, yaks, apples, and they harvested barley. And we were eating rice in South India. See, this is how the older generation nurtured us. And then said, our country had been occupied, taken away by our enemy, China. So you see, we started to hate a country we had never seen.
I think you are not enemy of China. I think you are China. Your enemy is not China, right?
So you see, this is how we started to grow up. What is the idea of a nation? Where do I belong to? When it comes to recognizing the enemy, you pass through many journeys. Your enemy doesn't remain the same. Sometimes you recognize that the enemy is not out there. Enemy is here. Your anger, your hatred, your greed, that's the real enemy. But you take 50 years to recognize that. You see, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, if we had not been provoked so much that 1/6 of Tibetan population died because of Chinese invasion and persecution, if we had not been provoked so much, the real Buddhism that believes in the power of love and compassion wouldn't have come out. You see, it takes that. I mean, sitting in an empty house or be air-conditioned, or in the mountains of Tibet, in a cave, and saying, Om Mani Padme Hum, doesn't amount to any Buddhism. There's no Buddhism in sitting meditation in an air-conditioned room at all. Really, I'm telling you. This is what I've seen Buddhist practices in many of the Western countries. Real Buddhism is when you live with an enemy, someone who hates you. Don't avoid, don't run away. Live with the enemy, that person who hates you, and start to love that enemy. Consider that enemy your teacher. We've been trying to do that. And our Buddhism gets better. You know, I think, and I may be politically wrong, but I believe that Tibetan practice of Buddhism had never been better than now. Because it tested us by fire, by anger, by hatred. Now we know what hatred really means, how it hurts us. 155 Tibetans burned themselves in self-immolation in Tibet. And yet, most of the countries, they do not know. They've never heard. And we have to live with this reality that 155 Tibetans, their self-immolations, not seen, not been aware by much of the world. Living with that kind of, neglect, ignorance, is so very difficult. How do you honor life of 155 Tibetans who burned themselves in self-immolation? To live with this, not only to bring about change in China, but just to get one recognition. As we speak, there are 2 live wars going on. Both the parties are killing each other. Entire world, their attention is there. In Palestine, Israel, and Ukraine and Russia. But where is the attention on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who has been leading a non-violent freedom struggle for 75 years? Non-violence did not die with Martin Luther King or with Václav Havel, your Velvet Revolution. No. The power of non-violence continues even without the visibility. The fire is still going on. That is the power that I'm talking about. A power that had not been seen, desired by entire world, but not practiced.
Thank you very much. I think it was amazing last word that we could hear here. Thank you.
Lastly, there is Violet Law here. Violet?
Climatization so much, they loved the climatization so much. Then they was thinking it's a holy water, man. And it was raining from the climatization, and everyone was thinking it's a holy water, and they was licking it, and then they was, that's the thing. Huh? Don't think climatization is not holy, yeah.
Thank you. That's what we were. And maybe, may I ask Loten for one last song at the end? Thank you.
Violet is here. Please come. Please bring a copy of the book, the translation. So Violet has translated one of the most powerful voices of Tibetan, Thiring Wese, who lives in Beijing, who writes in Chinese. So Violet, who comes from United States, or from Chicago, has translated her writings into English. and I've requested her to introduce the book and why you translate.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Tenzina. And like Tenzina User, she's also a fellow poet, but she's living under house arrest in China, and the events in Tibet, the Tibetan region in China has turned her into an activist and journalist. And just like, tonight we have talked about how Tibetan children are now no longer allowed to learn Chinese. User, when she was coming of age in the 80s, she has not been taught, she's only allowed to learn Chinese, and she's lost her opportunity to learn Tibetan properly. That's why she has to write in Chinese, which she calls the language of her enemies. And actually, User's writings were presented at this very center about 10 years ago. So I have the honor of being able to present her writings tonight, 10 years later, because there's a book that was 10 years ago, is her older book that was published in Czech. It was a book that she published in 2003, and that was at the point when she became a journalist and activist. She was actually persecuted in Lhasa, and that prompted her to move to Beijing for relatively safety. But since then, she has been under house arrest. And well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll do a launch photograph, please. Thank you.
Launch photograph, and maybe all of you, if you have the book, you can raise it. Before the launch, let me also thank you to all of the guests that we have here today. Let me thank you, Jana. Yeah, I have to show book. Now focus on the photo. And there is one more book. Thank you. Thank you. Let me thank you.
Yeah, so the important thing is to buy the book. That is going to be your physical support to the struggle and to art. So please do buy books, and it's a very good gift for your boyfriends and girlfriends.
And for Christmas
Thank
time,
you.
as a Christmas present.
And also, there are, I have both the books in English by the other book called Nowhere to Call Home, and Kora in English, and also in Czech language. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to amazing guests. Thank you, Tenzin Tsundueho, Loten Namling, Sonam Dolma, Zuzana Ondomišiová, Jana Hradilková. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. And I should also thank you, Czech Support Tibet. Češi Tibet podporují, Češi podporují Tibet. Thank you very much to US Embassy, especially Eitan Plasi, who was a big supporter and helped us a lot. And thank you that you came and spent 2 hours with us, even more. And last song.
Yes.
And wishing you have a nice evening.
One second.
So anyway,
Loten, come. I want to thank Czech Support Tibet for hosting the three of us. Sonam and I, we come from India, and Loten from Switzerland. And today is the 4th day, so we have series of events we've been able to participate. They hosted us. So as a gesture of our gratitude, I would like to offer one porba, Tibetan bowl, to Martinla. Please come. So this is the porba I want to present to you. Thank you.
So thank you, Tenzin, on behalf of us that you presented this bowl. So unfortunately, after all the CD stuff's gone, I don't have any CDs to sell here. Anyway, But you can listen to my songs now, and also Porok Karpo. It's a band that I have. Anyway, so many things actually came up while Tenzin Tsundueho was talking, and all the wonderful questionnaires, you know, amazing questions touching the deep problems of Tibet. And if I may, please allow me to say this to you, that the reason why I'm singing today is this. The reason I'm singing today is not for any other reason, but I wanted to talk as a little boy about Tibet to the world. And the reason why I sing today is only because of what's happening in Tibet. And so I'm going to sing you a song. I mean, I do rock, heavy metal, jazz, blues, not because I'm a jazz, blues, or heavy metal, but I thought that through, you know, rock, I met some of the most, you know, unimaginable friends of Tibet. I was once singing with Sepultura in Celesta, and I was told to improvise with Sepultura. And young people, you know, with earrings and, you know, like, what do you call that? Yeah, piercings, and, you know, you would never imagine. Normally people imagine Tibet supporters as, like, very nice, like you guys here, you know. But that evening, it was full of men and women with piercings and strange hairs and, you know, black leather things and souls and whatever, you know. It was one of the most beautiful moments in my life. And I didn't know because, you know, I was dressed very nicely, and I didn't even know who Sepultura was. And then they told me, Loten, please, you have to sing with Sepultura. Okay, you know, next morning I go there, and then, like, 5 minutes before the concert, Sepultura guys came on the stage, and I was like, oh shit, what should I do now with my nice... So, you know, the guys, they said, okay, Loten, we'll give you a space in between, and you sing, you know, and there's a Loten, you know, like that. I don't know what they did, but it was so, in one way frightening, you know. I thought, so you know what I did? I had very long hair, so I pulled off the thing, nice things here. I let the Tibetan dress flying, you know, and not like nicely tied there. And then, you know, it was such a wonderful moment. So I did all these things. But today I'm going to sing to you a very beautiful song by an artist, because you are talking about artists here. And I'm singing and playing this instrument. I'm playing this instrument only because of him. His name was Ajahn Namgyel, and he was a blind man. But when he was born, he was not blind. His parents, while collecting twigs to sell to the market, you know, they kept this little boy, not in a cradle, but, you know, on the ground, and surrounded this little boy with, you know, stones, so that the enemies will not come, you know, on the, inside, whatever. But they forgot that there are crows, enemies above. The crows came down and they took out both the eyeballs, and he became blind. But they were so good. Unfortunately for him, it was bad. But because of that, this boy was given by his parents so that he can survive an instrument like this, tanyan, just a handmade, and he played, and then later on he became the most famous Tibetan musician and singer ever. So I'm going to sing a song. He describes the nunnery of Chusang. so us. So, I will end this with this decade, just to wish you all best of luck in your life. With this, I'll wash away all your negativities. It is a very age-old tradition in Tibet. When I was a little boy, there was this man, I must have been around 8 years old. This man came with this mask in front of our house, and he did what I'm going to do for you. And it was so beautiful. As a little boy, I was so captivated by this man. But after years passed, he never came. And when he never came, I was so sad that we need this. And I said to myself, if he never comes again, I'm going to be him. So ever since I've been doing this, and I had the greatest blessing from His Holiness Dalai Lama. The moment I finished learning this, I received a call from Germany and said, Loten La, please sing for the Dalai Lama, for His Holiness. By that time, I had just learned this. For almost after 30, 40 years of my life, I came to know this. And I sang for him, and His Holiness said, that was perfect in Tibetan. Chu Shaba Chungsnas means that was so perfect. So I'm going to wash all your sins and whatever negative, and